Hello, and welcome back to the API Resilience Podcast. This episode features a continuation of our conversation with Ken Lane from Postman, and author of the blog APIevangelist.com. The conversation ran too long for one episode, but there was just too much good stuff to leave behind on the cutting room floor, so we broke the discussion into two episodes. The episode with the first part of our talk with Ken Lane dropped on September 24th, so if you missed that one, you'll probably want to start with it because Ken shared some really great perspectives on democratizing APIs, API literacy, and how your API program is a reflection and represents your company. Now here's the second part of that conversation where Ken shares his views on the human side of APIs. That is, being cooperative in a transactional world, the power of connection, and making people's lives better through your API delivery.
So I've done a few times where there's a few stories on API Evangelist. Every year I usually do this where I run like 2 weeks of my existence through Charles proxy and map all the individual endpoints. And then I organize them, group them, and go, here's all my digital bits. It's videos, blog posts. Like these are all the those individual transactions that I've done with the 1,200 domains that I interact with on a daily basis, Facebook, Twitter, Salesforce, all of this. And here's the individual transactions that occurred. Here's the word they used to describe that transaction. So these are my digital bits. Like this is me. This is Ken Lane online. And I've done several assessments where I'm okay, well, I'm giving way too much value to this domain. I should pull that back and keep that within the Ken Lane or the API Evangelist domain. And I'm going to make some money off that because that's my digital bit. And so I'm hyper aware of these, that our existences have been reduced to transactions and trying to embrace it and trying to be okay with it and trying to take some control back and make some money. And that's how I've survived over the last 10 years until I took this job with Postman is monetizing those bits. Like what's the value of a blog post when I post it on Medium versus when I post it on Ken Lane? And so what's the value of a podcast? What's the value of a video? And people are always wanting to do these with me, you guys included. Yeah. And so like, when do I give away a piece of myself? Because, Kristof and you and I go back, we've been exchanging value and transactions for quite a bit. And we've helped each other quite a bit over the years. You've helped build my events. You've come and spoke, and so we have this reciprocity. And hopefully I've helped you make money. You've definitely helped me make money. So how do you do that at an organizational or enterprise level? How do you map out what your digital, what are those bits? That's a much larger scale. And then how do you make sure as an organization you retain control, security, privacy, and then ultimately monetization over that, but monetization's not everything.
So I had a really fascinating discussion with Laura. Laura is I don't know if you've met Laura again. I'm not sure. Laura's my life and business partner.
No, I don't think I've met her.
We should meet up together once, or a few times. So once we can fly again. And we were talking. So I've been fascinated with transactional versus non-transactional relationships for a very long time now. Like and with Mark, and we've been talking about this a lot. And for a while, I believed that, we lost something when we made more and more of our life transactional. I think to some extent, that's definitely true. I think we gained scalability. So we making our relationships transactional and like zeroing out the value on every single transaction made it easier to like do business with strangers and lots of people, lot more than we could ever have done in a non-transactional way. It also gave us freedom because it meant that we didn't have to remember who we have gotten favors from or who we still need to do favors to. At the same time, it's like by zeroing out those relationships, we also lost that relationship. So for a very long time, inspired by David Graeber, like his book, 5,000 Year History of Debt, I was thinking that like actually it would be better if I had more non-transactional relationships, just the same way that you're like working together in your family. You don't give money to your kids. Just they're part of the family. They need to do their chores. That's just part of the deal. Just don't make that transactional, please, because you're gonna like grow them up as monsters. But what I started realizing is that, and this kind of sounds maybe crazy, but it doesn't work pure non-transactional. You cannot live purely non-transactional, especially not in this world. And actually, it's also not healthy because you lose your freedom, because now you're bound, indebted to all these people that have done favors to you, and you're scared to take favors because they're going to, maybe they'll use it against you and force you to do something you don't want to do. So, and then Laura said something really interesting, was that actually it's about layering these two on top of each other. So now what we normally do in business relationships is that you have a transactional relationship where you're exchanging value, but then there's a non-transactional layer on top of it, which is like the cream on the top of the cake. And it's that non-transactional bit that makes it valuable and meaningful, and that gives purpose to life. But it's the transactional like bulk that keeps you going, and that gives you freedom and prosperity, I think. And that was really interesting realization.
I like that. I agree with that a lot. I think that's a perfect way of saying it, because I mean, it's my struggle with the APIs and being API evangelist over the years is my wife always says, I actually have a sticker for API evangelist that says you're always reducing everything to a transaction. Like, it's my job. This is what I do, yeah. And then she said that a lot of times, and I say it back to her. I think it's a really kind of magical phrase, because it's interesting when you say it in front of different people. Some people see that as a positive and some people see that as a negative.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm in the business of reducing everything to a transaction. They're like, yes, that's going to enable so many more transactions and new types of transactions, and you're going to be able to scale your transactions. I'm like, wait, no, I meant that in a negative way. Like, I took something like, a picture of me holding my baby daughter, and now became a transaction because I published it publicly somewhere, and Instagram took the copyright to it, and now it's a transaction, and or it's being shared as part of a meme. It's like, no, that's my daughter. That's not a transaction. And so I kind of see transactions at that level, kind of like entropy, which is one of those magical words that very few people actually know what it means. I don't fully know what it means, but like actually back to one of the cybernetics guys, Claude Shannon, who was the inventor of information theory, and then Norbert Wiener, who's one of the early fathers of compute. They both had different views of what entropy was. Like, one would call it positive entropy and one would call it negative entropy, and they were like, well, we mean the same thing. But like, entropy is like chaos or distortion in your world, which can be good or it can be bad. And I think when it comes to the number of transactions, like Facebook is very chaotic to me. It's like definitely negative entropy, or it's not negative entropy. It's positive entropy, means the chaos is growing and the insanity is growing, but it's actually a negative in my life. But it's a positive in Facebook's world because ads and transactions and eyeballs. And so the view of a transaction for me is super fascinating. Some people see them as good, some people see them as bad. But I really like what she said about acknowledging that there's this non-transactional layer that has to exist. And I see that's what healthcare and education is as industries. If we're looking at the corporate, the enterprise entity, like, there are things that should not be transactions in the educational space. My child's attendance is not a transaction. I'm sorry. It's like, my child learning something at school is not a transaction, and it should not be monetized and surveilled and all of these things. So like, how we, I think, get more honest in our world that transactions are not always good, but they're not always bad. And digital transactions specifically, I think, more so can be bad. They can be useless or they can be meaningless. They can be weaponized. They can be predatory. They can be exploitative, but they can also be very good, and something like, especially in a COVID world, And so how do we get much more honest about that debate and that discussion, I guess, is where I would take it.
I think the key question is, what is the other thing? Because it's kind of, it's so normal and so human for us that we don't even realize that we're doing it. Like we're like, yeah, it's just part of my family. It's my daughter or my son. And it's like, yeah, of course I give them food. Like, I'm not a monster. like you didn't do your chores, no dinner for you. Like, no. so it's, but I think what we're doing there is that we're creating, like, I've been thinking about this as like value through identity and shared identity and meaning and purpose and connection. It's like we're connecting up together to become something more than individuals. And I think that's like a lot of really good stuff is there. Trust is there, making people really passionate about what they're doing. Like if you're running a corporation, you need this. Because this is what culture is about. It's this non-transactional part of it. Like, and if you translate it to transactions, if you're trying to reward people for how well they're aligned with your culture, you're not going to be very lucky because that's just not how it works. But it's so invisible that we're taking it so much for granted that we need to get rid of that blind spot for it, because I think otherwise we take it for granted and we destroy it. And
But this is the struggle on the ground at every enterprise. I mean, this is what we hear when it comes to the microservices and decomposing the monolith, that this isn't about technology. This is about organizations and people working together. And places where I see microservices or APIs, working the best is organizations that allow their workers to be human beings. Like they're not just there to do transactions. They're there as people to add value, to do, yes, perpetuate and facilitate many transactions. That's definitely a business goal. But when you diminish that and it becomes more about the transactions and less about the people, APIs, I think, fail and break and don't scale. They're much more brittle. But organizations that acknowledge this is about teams, this is about people, collaboration, working together, sharing, reciprocity, they're a lot more successful and healthy when it comes to their API efforts, internally or externally, because it is about the humans. Whether it's internal humans, partner humans, or just public citizen humans, your digital resources and how you grow and facilitate transactions is part of that. You can't ignore the people. It's, and we're not all transactions, and we need more nourishment than just transactionals. And we need our workplace to be somewhat non-transactional, right? To a certain degree, yes. In some ways.
Yes, because else you take the humans out of it and you turn it into a machine. And then you get a brittle, non-adaptive thing that's just going to blow up the first time there's a big shock, like COVID or something like that. It's the non-transactional bit that binds us together, and that makes us human.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I think about all the times I've seen you around the world when we used to travel. I've seen you in I don't know how many different cities at an event. You just come up out of the crowd and there you are. And then I don't think we've ever exchanged money, actually worked for each other, but like we've definitely had, this is a transaction. This is a digital, we're doing this, all the way. But the ones that really connected you and I were the drinking and the eating of food in various countries and then the conversations online like this. I mean, this is transactional, but I would say there's a non-transactional aspect to this, because I know you, I like you, we've built a relationship, we've strengthened that relationship over time, where I've had people that are similar just go away and we stop doing transactions, and I don't have this kind of strengthened or deepened or relationship with. So I think you and I have found I would say a healthy blend of transactional or non-transactional, but it's still very tech. We're still you're selling portals, you're making customers, I'm doing what I'm doing. We still live in a very transactional space. And I think as an evangelist, that's what wears me thin and grinds me down is is not enough Kristofs and Marks in the world that I actually build relationships with, exchange ideas with, think about, but then successfully move forward transactions, and we're all able to live, pay our bills, and do our thing. So I think that's a healthy representation.
I think it's, we should both go away thinking, oh, I've given less than what I've gotten.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. And this is also what we formalized this in our company now. We recently I started saying, like, I want to have decades long relationships with our customers. Like, I want to give more than like, I want to feel like everybody should always feel like all our employees should feel like they're getting more than what they give. But also our customers should feel that. And if we keep doing that, we just keep building positive value in those relationships, and we're building capital in there. And
So how can you do that in a developer portal? Like, how can you encapsulate everything you just said in a, it's not static, but it's dynamic, but in a single landing page that's very technical, is going to have lots of technical details. But how do you build in the non-transactional pieces so that they know there's a human behind the scene on this portal? There's a human who put their love and care into this docs. There's SSO, so I can connect it with my corporate account. You know, like, how do you make this very transactional thing, this interface of interfaces, that is all about facilitating and streamlining and reducing friction for transactions? But how do you make sure it's also about the people?
Actually, funny enough, like in our downstream developer experience journey, I added a step a long time ago, which was celebrate. And that's actually that. It's basically saying, so you've done your integration with us, you've gone through all of this stuff, we care about you. Yeah. Like, we're going to put you on our dev portal. We're going to show that you've done something with us. And so actually, but although I haven't seen many people doing it.
One of the reasons I'm at Pronovix is that over the years, talking with Kristof, I realized that he and I have very compatible views of how business should work and how the world should work. And when he told me about developer portals, I got to tell you, I was not that excited about it because I was thinking about documentation, and he had already been on a documentation bender for a while. And sorry, Kristof. And then I went to the API, the Docs conference, and I was really blown away by the conference. It was super interesting. And Kristof said, look, we're going to make people's lives better. And the segment of people's lives that we're going to make better are developers. And there's a lot of them out there. And that's our goal, is to make their lives better. And we talk about the upstream developers, the downstream developers. And that's part of what keeps me interested here. Because if it was about documentation, I wouldn't open the book. Yeah, snoozer. So I really think the kinds of things that we talk about in building a developer portal is about very human things. It's about, showing trustworthiness, showing, your ability to, state, what you're going to do and then follow through with what you're going to do. All of these things are very human. And what I hadn't gotten until this conversation, actually, you introduced it in the conversation that got scuttled because we ran out of time. But the idea of making sure that there is harmonization between that message on the developer portal, that it harmonizes with the code, and it's also harmonized with the the marketing message. And Kristof, I think that's got to go into the dev portal maturity model that you're working on.
For the new strategy white paper.
Yeah.
I'd love to. So I was having a conversation yesterday with I won't name names, but a European banking regulator organization, and going, okay, all the banks have PSD2 APIs, right? I'm like, yes, okay. Are they really PSD2? Like, wait, we're not even going to talk about that. Like, is it accurate? But we can't find them. I'm like, well, do they have a portal? And they're like, well, not all of them. I was like, well, was there guidance on having a portal as part of it? And like, well, yes, no, we're not sure. Like, okay, well, do some of them have portals? And they're like, yes, some of them really do. I'm like, well, those are the good ones. Like, they may not all be really, really good, but like having a portal is the first sign. Like, I actually care about someone finding and using this API. And then all of the depths that I know you guys are super intimate with further show that I care about you as a consumer, or I'm just doing this because the government regulator told me to do it, and I'm not actually, I could care less about you. So I really think, again, it's the window to our soul, our enterprise soul.
I'm thinking of Raiders of the Lost Ark for APIs. If this is your discovery model, you're not doing it right. So I'm not very good at whimsical slides, but boy, you've got me thinking about some whimsical slides now.
Yeah, it's truth. It's powerful, and I mean, portals, I've looked at thousands of them, and I can tell you whether someone's home. I can tell you whether someone ran out of funding within like 5 seconds of being on their portal. I can tell if they care about you or not. I can, there's a lot of signals that get thrown out, and I don't think people realize what they're doing when they do a lot of it. And some do. Some are very cautious. The portal's just docs. We're not going to put any real-time feeds of anything because we don't want people to like expect something from us. Yes. So like you guys have seen I'm sure it's all the modules of what you guys offer all tell a little story about what the intent is behind that, and then that's going to set the tone for all of those transactions that occur, good or bad.
I'd like to compare your list to our list, so maybe we should co-author a paper or do a webinar together or something like that.
I think it's in order. Let's do that. Let's get that in the books.
We need to do more with Postman. I think we just launched. We just added a little, like a tiny little integration where if you have an X property in your spec for Postman collection, it will show up on the portal. So we've done that, yes. But I think we should look at more opportunities to do stuff together. Yeah.
Love to explore that. I'm all about the partner program right now. Yep. So how we do that, and again, how we build reciprocity into that. So we don't have a portal solution, but we have all the bits that go into it, docs and mocks and whatnot. So let's figure it out.
Yeah, let's do that. I'd like to say thank you because I just realized that our whole dev portal business, like this whole thing, like everything, like API, the docs, this podcast, our business, our growth in the last 5 years, all started at the API days in Paris.
Nice.
And that was Mehdi and you for a big part, and then So I just realized is that this wouldn't have happened without that conference. There's a lot of coins in your in your jar.
I wish I had done a video capture the first time Mehdi Skyped me in 2012, and he was maybe 8 years old, I think, when he looked. He just looks so young compared to the way he looks now. He's like old, haggard, wise person now. But we were doing API Strata at the time, and he's like, "Hey, I want to do an event." And I'm like, "Who are you, kid?" It's like, but I took his call, and he's just so charismatic. He was so great. And then he's like, "But I'm in France, and how do we do this?" And I was like, "Well, let me call Mike Amundsen. Let me call Steve Klapnick. We'll just all come over, and we'll kick off your event." And then he took it from there. And I've spoke at quite a few of them and helped him with a few of them, but he, lighting, I would say back to the imagination thing, finding people like Mehdi and then lighting the fire into their imagination and then letting them go. I mean, he's gone way further than I ever did with API Strat, and then setting you in motion like this, paying it forward that happens. I mean, this is very, very API in my book, and this is how we do it. And I think of all the people, I'm look forward to getting to hang with you, Mark, in person. But the number of times Kristof and I have been in bars and big restaurants, and and then setting in motion. I think of Arnaud, API handyman. I remember the first, I think it was Berlin, so it was API days, but him showing up, barely spoke English, was like, I like APIs. I'm like, and you got a great personality. Let's figure out how to, give you a platform. And again, he's gone his own direction. He's amazing. So like, how do we keep doing this in the space? This is something that Abhinav is really charging me with at Postman, is he really wants to figure out how do we have a second wave of creativity and exploration and community in the API space that was similar to 2012 to 15. And it was partly because there was a lot of money, in the space at that time. And so how do we do that again, though? How do we get more investment? I would say if you look at TechCrunch and with Postman's funding, the VCs are back. APIs matter. So how do we capitalize on that? But then how do we, again, add that non-transactional layer to it all that I think brought you and I together, Kristof, is make sure we have events that are meaningful, make sure both virtual and in person. How do we, give people a platform and a voice? No one, not everyone needs to hear me yet again. Like, how do we find new voices and bring them in? Diverse voices, Eastern and Western voices, I think is a critical piece. And then how do we figure this out, in the next decade? I think it's a good time. So yeah, let's figure it out.
I think it's, I wonder if it's the clickers. Like my thing in Drupal, like coming from, and we have a hard stop in a couple of minutes. So I just want to drop this one because it's really near to my heart. In the Drupal community, I am not a developer. I'm still not a developer. I got into software because there was this magical piece of software where you just could click on stuff and it would build beautiful, well, maybe not that beautiful, but it would build really cool web pages. And it was like the power of the clicker, like people that came from all kinds of walks of life, had no clue about software, and they were able to do magic. I think
that's the formula right there.
That's what we need to do.
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, Kristof.
So I'll end on this note. We're going all Team Drupal at Postman.
All right.
And so I heard a talk from the guy, our lead on the front end team, that sounded just like Kristof. So we're gonna have to explore this actually as far as communities, as far as maturity, because there's a reason that we're choosing Drupal is because it has a certain level of maturity when it comes to all the things you expect. But anyways, I'm preaching to the choir because I've heard all this from Kristof. So I got to end it there. I got to go, guys. But this has been magical, and I enjoy talking with you too.
Hey, thanks, Ken. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait till we can travel again and I can meet you in person.
Cool. Look forward to it.
And I want to thank our listeners. We really appreciate you tuning in. Please check out the links in the show notes and make sure you thank Ken for his time and give us ideas for other guests and topics that you'd like us to dig in on. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. You guys rock. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the API Resilience Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please follow us to hear our latest episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. And if you have any comments or feedback you would like to share, please drop us an email at podcasts@pronovix.com. Until next time, we wish you well and hope you find success in all your endeavors.